Silencing mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Appearing in federal court after nearly a decade of silence, Wendy Williams' testimony didn't just target the alleged mastermind Diddy but also dragged a slew of once untouchable power players into the fray. Names that long sat at the pinnacle of the entertainment industry now find themselves under the glaring spotlight of justice, as Williams begins to unravel what she calls Hollywood's unhealed wounds. Okay, he was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon and making terroristic threats. No longer mere baseless rumors, Wendy's court appearance comes armed with documents, testimonies, and long-buried evidence, enough to shatter the walls of lies piece by piece. So what drove this woman, once shunned by the industry, to stand up and accuse? Is there an unseen hand backing her, helping her reclaim her spotlight? Or is Wendy herself an indispensable link in a larger plan to topple Diddy and reshape Hollywood's power game? Wendy, you got fired from Hot 97 years ago because of Diddy. On a tense May Day, as the trial of Sean Diddy Combs unfolded, the New York federal courtroom fell into a breathless silence when Wendy Williams stepped inside. Gone was the radiant glow of her former days. Her face bore the weariness of a soul long burdened, yet she stood resolute, unshaken. Perhaps because after nearly a decade of silence, Wendy Williams had endured too much. Now, appearing in this courtroom, she was determined to expose the man she called the dark mogul of the music industry, Sean Diddy Combs. Under the piercing gazes of those present, Wendy Williams began, her voice low but brimming with resolve. I've stayed silent for too long. I've endured late-night threatening calls, advertising contracts yanked without explanation, and warnings as sharp as a blade against my throat, all because I dared to speak Diddy's name. But today, I have nothing left to lose. The name Diddy has long been synonymous with power, a billionaire media mogul and top-tier music producer who shaped the careers of countless A-list artists. But behind that glittering facade, according to Wendy Williams' testimony, lies an organized system of abuse, an underworld where any voice daring to challenge it is ruthlessly silenced. Wendy recalled her early days breaking into radio, when she was repeatedly warned for exposing the horrific truths behind the lavish parties Diddy hosted. These parties were described with haunting imagery, for drips hanging overhead, flickering red candles casting shadows in the dark, young women escorted into private rooms, all required to sign non-disclosure agreements before stepping foot inside. I spoke about those things on air, and within a week I lost a major advertising deal. It stunned me, a clear, brutal first strike of retaliation, she said. Through her testimony, a chilling picture emerges of psychological pressure, silent terror campaigns, and gradual isolation. Beyond the fear of having her career stripped away, Wendy also faced threatening calls and even attacks from a girl group once backed by Diddy, whom she believes were directed to intimidate her. Music mogul who sent his all-girl group to beat my A in front of the radio station. It was perhaps the years of relentless psychological torment from the mogul that ultimately led to Wendy Williams' severe diagnosis, aphasia and frontotemporal dementia, conditions that turned her life upside down. When I started talking about Diddy, she said, her voice steady, I wasn't trying to tear him down, I just wanted people to wake up. From the early 2000s, I saw it. Diddy was protected. Shielded. People warned me not to mention his name because it would scare off sponsors. But I thought it was a joke. Then I lost contracts and got fired from my radio job. I love that you have, 6 kids, 3 babies moms. Yes, all taken care of. I met all of them in the same year, so I've known all of them the same amount of time. But we were friends. It was perhaps the years of relentless psychological torment from the mogul that ultimately led to Wendy Williams' severe diagnosis, aphasia and frontotemporal dementia, conditions that turned her life upside down. When I started talking about Diddy, she said, her voice steady, I wasn't trying to tear him down, I just wanted people to wake up. From the early 2000s, I saw it. Diddy was protected. Shielded. People warned me not to mention his name because it would scare off sponsors. But I thought it was a joke. Then I lost contracts and got fired from my radio job. In the last 30 days, I went out twice, for my teeth. You know what I'm saying? And I want my life back. As Wendy began recounting the threatening calls, a heavy silence fell over the courtroom. All eyes turned to Diddy. Before she could finish, Sean Combs' lawyer shot up, voice sharp as ice. Objection. There's no concrete evidence those calls came from Mr. Combs. Who were they? What did they say? Does she have recordings? On the defendant's bench, Diddy's hands tightened on his lap. He kept his head down, but his eyes darted, betraying unease. This was no stage. No music or spotlights to hide behind. Only the law and cold accusations. His face, so familiar in the media with its confident smile, now seemed a cracking mask. Wendy nodded calmly, then signaled. A muffled recording played, its low menacing voice echoing through the courtroom. "You know what's waiting for you if you keep running your mouth." A murmur rippled through the courtroom but was swiftly silenced by the judge's gavel. At that moment, Wendy held up yellowed pages, worn by time, each marked with specific dates written in slanted handwriting, every line of memory an anonymous call, a contract inexplicably vanished, a sudden removal from television at the peak of her career. Diddy's side visibly tensed. His lawyer rose again, this time with sharper hostility. "Your Honor, all she's presented are personal notes, no photographic evidence, no direct witnesses, and entirely capable of being fabricated to sway public opinion." Diddy remained silent, but his gaze darkened. Gone was the confidence of a seasoned producer, replaced by a look of doubt. Whether aimed at Wendy or at those once thought to be backing him, no one could tell. Wendy, undeterred, pressed on, recounting the time she was attacked backstage by girl groups trained by Diddy himself. In her testimony, she revealed at least 2 incidents where she was ambushed by female artists after a show, met with venomous words and blatant intimidation. One of them grabbed my arm and said, "You know the rules, Wendy. Don't make yourself a pawn anymore," she recalled, her voice catching. "I looked into their eyes. I didn't see hatred. I saw fear. They said those things because someone made them." Diddy's lawyer leapt up again, this time with a mocking tone. "We're hearing a story straight out of a novel. No photos. No videos. No verifiable evidence. She's crafting a narrative to mislead the public." But the prosecution swiftly countered, asserting that Wendy's testimony was just one piece of a larger puzzle, with other witnesses, still anonymous, beginning to come forward. Voices once silenced were now rising, shielded by the law. In the dazzling yet treacherous world of entertainment, Wendy wasn't the only one to glimpse the invisible hand pulling the strings. But she was among the rare few who dared to stand up. That defiance made her a thorn in the side of a powerful machine. Every time she uttered on air, she inched closer to the edge of an abyss, where her career, sanity, and safety were all at stake. Then, in the hushed courtroom, Wendy delivered a haunting line, "I'm no longer afraid they'll silence me." The scariest thing is that they already did, for 10 years. Wendy's testimony pressed on, her presence in the courtroom targeting not just Diddy but also the powerful names in his alleged network of accomplices, Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey. At that moment, Wendy produced her book The Wendy Williams Experience, published in 2004, a work filled with coded references and veiled warnings about Diddy, Jay-Z, and their lavish lifestyles. Once dismissed as mere gossip, the government now viewed it as undeniable evidence. Jurors exchanged glances. Some scribbled notes quickly while others seemed skeptical, as if questioning whether words from 2 decades ago could truly carry enough weight to serve as proof. Undeterred, Wendy recounted her 2009 interview with Mark Curry, a former bad boy artist and author of Dancing with the Devil, who called Diddy a shadow that destroys people. She fully agreed. Yet soon after, that interview vanished from the radio station's archives, as if it had never happened. She told the court that every time she named someone critical of the industry, be it super executives, Gene Deal, or figures like Jaguar Wright, she faced fierce backlash. Threatening emails, warnings, even complaints to the Federal Communications Commission, FCC. "They tried to stop me by any means possible," she said. One detail seized the courtroom's attention, an unwritten list, known to everyone in the industry, of names you couldn't mention. "I tried breaking that rule a decade ago, and I paid dearly," Wendy said. She explained how segments on her show mentioning sensitive names were repeatedly flagged for review. Producers issued threats and executives warned her to stop. "They told me I'd ruin everything, for them, the station, and myself. I had to stop," she said. "For me, this trial isn't the start, it's the end of a long cover-up. I've been sounding the alarm for 20 years. Finally, someone's listening." Looking around the courtroom, Wendy's voice shifted, sharper and more resolute. "But is this just about Diddy? No." She locked eyes with the jury and declared, "This is about an ecosystem protecting him, including names never before mentioned in a courtroom. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey." Diddy's lawyer immediately stood, demanding the judge strike those names from the record for lack of direct evidence, arguing that mentioning figures like Perry and Winfrey was a ploy to grab attention and distract the jury from the case's core. A heavy silence enveloped the courtroom. The prosecution pressed her to clarify, and Wendy responded clearly, "Hollywood has a list, not one you can see or hold, but it exists. It's a list of people you don't mess with. Break that rule, and you disappear. Why was Wendy so certain? Because after a falling out with the Precious team, the film involving Perry and Oprah, her career in the industry collapsed. I went from being invited to premieres to being erased from guest lists. An executive bluntly told me, "Oprah's people don't want you near him anymore." That was real power, wielded to shield Diddy and others in his system. But did Wendy label Oprah a monster with the same motives as Diddy solely for this reason? No. There was a darker story. Wendy had once confided in Oprah about her past abuse, and Oprah promised never to exploit it. Yet what followed stunned her. Her abuser appeared on epicenter of that tangled web lay Sean Diddy Combs, the silencing mogul whose reach extended far beyond the music industry into every crevice of Hollywood's power structure. Wendy Williams' testimony painted a vivid and harrowing picture, one that revealed how the glossy surface of celebrity was just a mask for a ruthless machinery of control and coercion. As the courtroom lights dimmed to a more somber glow, Wendy took a slow breath and leaned forward. "It's not just about me or even about Diddy. This is about an entire ecosystem built on silence, fear, and exploitation." Her voice grew steadier, fueled by a decade of pent-up truth. "I know people who have disappeared from this industry, their careers erased overnight for even whispering his name. Not just me. People who were considered untouchable until they became inconvenient." Her eyes scanned the jury with a piercing intensity that seemed to cut through the very walls of the courtroom. "They call it the Hollywood Code, an unwritten but fiercely enforced rule that protects the powerful at any cost. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Jay-Z, even the networks and streaming giants, they all play a role, whether willingly or out of fear." The mention of such titans of industry sparked a stir. A hush fell over the crowd, punctuated only by the rustle of papers and a few soft gasps. Wendy paused, letting the weight of her words settle before continuing. "For years, I was blacklisted after refusing to comply. I lost advertising deals, radio gigs, TV spots, all because I refused to stay silent about the abuses I witnessed. The power they wield isn't just financial. It's psychological, emotional, even legal. I was threatened with lawsuits, subjected to smear campaigns, and isolated from friends and colleagues. But worst of all, I watched as women and men who spoke up were destroyed, careers ruined, reputations shredded." She folded her hands on the desk before her, the slight tremor in her fingers betraying the emotional toll. "I am just one voice, but there are many others. Anonymous voices, silenced voices, waiting for someone to break the spell. That's why I'm here. To break the silence. To pull back the curtain on the darkness that powers Hollywood." The prosecution had prepared meticulously, with each piece of evidence presented reinforcing Wendy's narrative. Dozens of emails, phone records, and confidential memos surfaced, revealing a pattern of intimidation, bribes, and calculated manipulation. One particularly damning email showed a direct order from one of Diddy's closest associates instructing PR teams to neutralize any journalist or artist who dared to speak ill of him. The defense pushed back fiercely, dismissing the documents as circumstantial or the product of disgruntled insiders seeking revenge. Yet, even as the defense argued, the courtroom's atmosphere shifted. The once untouchable mogul now sat under a cloud of suspicion, the veneer of invincibility cracking. During a recess, several journalists whispered about the case's potential to upheave Hollywood's status quo. Industry insiders, long accustomed to a culture of secrecy, were suddenly confronting a public reckoning. The trial was no longer just about Sean Diddy Combs. It was a battle for the soul of an industry. Outside the courtroom, social media exploded. Hashtags like #silencingmogul and #Wendy Williams speaks trended worldwide. Fans and critics alike debated the implications, many rallying behind Wendy's bravery. Yet, others accused her of opportunism, casting doubt on her motives and the veracity of her claims. But Wendy was undeterred. In a rare interview during the trial's break, she told reporters, "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to make sure no one else suffers in silence. For every whisper buried, for every career destroyed, for every life harmed, this is for them." Behind the scenes, sources revealed that a growing number of industry veterans and former insiders were quietly coming forward, offering corroborating accounts under the shield of confidentiality. Some feared retaliation, others sought redemption. All painted a picture of a deeply entrenched culture of fear. The trial also brought to light the devastating personal consequences Wendy endured. Doctors testified about her battle with aphasia and frontotemporal dementia, conditions experts linked to the extreme stress and trauma she faced during those years of harassment. Her diagnosis, once viewed as a tragic accident of fate, now appeared intertwined with a system designed to break her spirit. Legal experts watching the case noted its significance. This trial challenges not just an individual but an entire framework of power in entertainment. If Wendy prevails, it could set precedent for how abuse of power is addressed in Hollywood and beyond. Wendy's testimony continued with grim detail. She recounted nights filled with threatening calls, anonymous messages warning her to keep quiet or else, and encounters with shadowy figures sent to intimidate her at public events. One incident in particular haunted her, a backstage ambush by an all-girl group signed to Diddy's label, who confronted her with veiled threats and physical aggression. "I wasn't just attacked. I was sent a message, 'You don't cross the line,'" Wendy said, her voice faltering momentarily before regaining strength. "That was the moment I realized the cost of speaking out was more than just my career. It was my safety, my sanity." The courtroom reacted with a mixture of sympathy and disbelief. The judge allowed a short recess after this testimony, acknowledging the emotional weight carried by the witness. In the days that followed, other anonymous witnesses provided sealed depositions supporting Wendy's claims of systematic abuse and silencing tactics. These testimonies painted a broader canvas of Hollywood's hidden shadows, revealing patterns of exploitation that extended beyond Diddy's circle to other powerful figures. One deposition came from a former assistant to a well-known producer who described a culture of enforced loyalty enforced through fear and blacklisting. Another was from a PR consultant who admitted to orchestrating smear campaigns against dissenters. The prosecution also called in experts on corporate abuse and psychological coercion to explain how power dynamics can create environments where victims feel trapped, unable to speak without severe repercussions. Meanwhile, the defense sought to undermine Wendy's credibility by highlighting inconsistencies in her accounts and suggesting that her medical condition might affect her memory. They portrayed her as a disgruntled former employee seeking to rebuild a faltering career at the expense of a respected mogul. However, several witnesses from Wendy's past stepped forward to defend her character and corroborate parts of her testimony, emphasizing her long-standing reputation for integrity and courage. The trial's intensity escalated when Wendy produced her book, The Wendy Williams Experience, filled with veiled warnings and coded references to the very abuses she now exposed in court. Once dismissed as celebrity gossip, the book now stood as a prophetic chronicle of Hollywood's darkest corners. Her recounting of a 2009 interview with Mark Curry, where he called Diddy a shadow that destroys people, struck a chord. Wendy testified that soon after, the interview was erased from all archives, as if erased from history itself. "This isn't just about one man or one industry," Wendy declared, voice rising with conviction. "It's about a culture that protects predators, that values profit over people, and fame over justice. For too long, silence has been bought with money, and truth has been buried under lies." The courtroom fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the judge's gavel signaling a brief pause. Outside, advocacy groups and survivors of abuse in entertainment hailed Wendy's testimony as a landmark moment. Discussions about reform and accountability gained momentum, with calls for greater protections for those who dare to speak out. Back inside the courtroom, the prosecution unveiled a series of non-disclosure agreements, emails, and internal memos revealing a systematic campaign to suppress damaging information. One memo detailed how NDAs were used not just to protect privacy, but to intimidate and silence whistleblowers through the threat of massive financial penalties. Wendy explained that she had been offered a lucrative TV deal contingent on her silence about Diddy's alleged misconduct, an offer she refused, choosing integrity over money despite the devastating consequences. "This wasn't just a business deal," she said. "It was a trap, designed to buy my silence and keep the truth buried." The defense argued that NDAs are standard practice in entertainment, used to safeguard privacy and intellectual property. They accused Wendy of twisting routine legal instruments into a conspiracy theory. But Wendy was prepared. She produced emails showing coordination between PR firms, talent managers, and bloggers aimed at controlling the public narrative and suppressing rumors unfavorable to Diddy. One striking image shown to the jury captured Diddy, Tyler Perry, and a high-profile crisis management expert smiling at a 2019 gala, a stark contrast to the silent suffering of those paid off or threatened into submission. "This is the face of power protecting itself," Wendy asserted. "Behind these smiles are deals made in the shadows to keep victims quiet." Her testimony underscored a broader systemic failure, how fame and influence can corrupt justice and shield wrongdoing. "Money buys silence, but it cannot buy truth," she concluded. As the trial approached its climax, The prosecution argued that this was not just a personal vendetta but a critical moment for justice and accountability in entertainment. In a final poignant moment, Wendy told the jury, "For 10 years, they silenced me. But silence is no longer an option. Not for me, not for anyone."